Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to do an unboxing of the Armageddon War base game. I probably should have already cut the plastic on here, but I didn't. I got the scissors though. Alright, so let me rip some plastic, then we'll take a look. I know, what is this, the shrink rip portion. This is probably the part of an unboxing I dislike the most, so I probably should have cut this first. I guess we do this because we want to show you this is legit. We haven't already been playing with it. We want to open this with you. But at the same time, I just want to see what's in it. I don't care how you open it. Alright, there's your cover. I think this is a fantastic piece of art. I'm pretty sure a lot of people might not agree with me, but I just always thought this was a really cool picture, so just throwing that out there. Now when I flip this over, again we've got a brief description of the game. You've got the contents of the game, so this has got your two maps. They're 22 by 33 inch maps. They're huge maps. I think they're on par with the old school tactical maps, and they're mounted, so we'll take a look at those. You got 4 counter sheets. There's the rules. The rules and scenarios are one book. There's player aid cards. There's 18 colored dice that we'll take a peek at. It says this is for 14 and up. I think when we actually started play testing this, and I had my play test kit, my son was like 13 and he could play it just fine. So take the 14 is not a hard requirement, but this game is a little more complicated than some of the other Flying Pig games. So, you know, 14 probably is not unrealistic, but a person who's really interested could probably start playing it sooner than that, all right? But then 2 players, or it can be solo with the solo expansion. The solo expansion includes rules to play the 2-player games as solo games. And it says playing time 1 to 3 hours, which is true. The more familiar you are with the game, the quicker the games play, and then obviously the more units you involve, the longer it takes. But I don't think that's an unrealistic time frame. Alright, good. Enough talking. Let's get in here. I'm trying very carefully to open this. Come on. We will be doing demos of this at Origins, and I don't know. I can't speak to this. I don't know if we'll have how many copies were taken to Origins. I know we're having games and things shipped there, so it's hard to say how many copies we'll have for people to try if you haven't seen this yet or you want to play it before you buy it. But I think I know we're gonna have demos of this. I'll be running demos. Then we have the dice. So that's the first thing that comes out. Yes, they are dice, but here's the but. I'm gonna rotate the camera so I'm not bumping my tripod all the time. Alright, let's talk about the dice a little bit here. These dice are actually custom dice for this game. Yeah, this is something Mark Walker and I talked about a little bit. The wargaming industry does not have a lot of games with special dice for their games. I know there's like Memoir 44, that specifically comes to mind, and then games based on that system, yes, they do have custom dice. So I'm not saying there are none, but most games are going to run with like die 6, you know, a standard die 6. What we have here though are dice that represent little explosions for hits, little shields that represent counterfire, not necessarily defense. And so at a glance, as you assemble your pool, you can quickly roll the dice and then get some combat results. This is your combat results table. If you're not familiar with Armageddon War at all, this is the unique thing that I think really speeds up play. There are some calculations that you make before you roll the dice. And basically, you know, you're going to take your firepower. You start with a basic set of dice. Let's say your firepower is 3. You're going to take away your opponent's defense, and then there's some modifiers that will change the quality of your die. It could go green, which is weaker, red, which is stronger. You know, so once you've assembled your pool and you roll your pool, this tells you the results. So there's no charts, and it either, you know, just like a regular game, the dice are either with you or against you, kind of a thing. But I think this is a really, really important thing to discuss. The dice here, I have some of the dice that were like prototype play dice, and they were fine. But the final dice, these are solid. These are great. They feel good. They're nice and glossy. The symbols are baked in there really, really well. I know there are people who don't like custom dice because if you lose a custom dice, how do you replace that? But hold on to your dice, because honestly, I've demoed with some folks, and once you get the dice mechanic down, it really does make for a thematic game. And you know, in a normal game, you're rolling dice and everybody's watching the dice to see what comes up. So it's even more exciting when you play Armageddon War to watch those dice roll and then see what results come up. And then right there tells you exactly what happens for combat. So there's the dice. When we do like a rules and a gameplay example, you'll see those in action better. All right, so let's pull out some of the components from the box. So item 1 was dice. Then we got the rule book. Another great thing though about Armageddon, or like Flying Pig games in general, is the rule books. We've tried, and Mark really believes in giving you something visually pleasing as well. Rules are sometimes not a thing that people enjoy. It's kind of like a necessity, but at least make it visually engaging. And again, this is a great example of that. You've got great pictures and examples of the components that it's referencing. You've got a lot of boxes that will highlight important notes as you read. So you've got examples, you've got notes from the designer, and again, great pictures. The rules, if you're curious, they are up on the Flying Pig website. If you go to flyingpiggames.com, look in the Armageddon portion of the website, then you can view the rules for yourself. And they are a really great set of rules, and the book is really, really nice. So this is a nice kind of glossy paper. I probably shouldn't do this, but whenever I like to take my finger and I'll find a spot in the book and just kind of rub my finger, and I check for smudging. I know that sounds weird, but I've actually gotten games before where the ink just rubbed off as I was reading, and that annoyed me to no end. So I always test and no smudging. So this is great. I think that was something, I think when this was printed, that was one of the things that was sent back to us was extra time for like counter sheets and things to dry. Well, I'm glad. I didn't want to get wet product and have things smear. So then you have rules, then you jump into scenarios. Scenario tweaking. There's a point, so this is something that's very, very cool too. There is a point system for all the different pieces of equipment in the game, so you can create your own scenarios. Like there's a section for that. And that alone, I think sometimes is missing from games. This is what gives you the chance to have an infinite amount of scenarios to play. You can make up any situation you want, and you know, instead of guessing at balance, you have a point cost to start with to help you balance your game. And then of course, you know, test it from there. But we already got a point system. Couple that with the solo system. You as a solo player can create your own scenarios, have the solo system to back you up, and you can play this game anytime, anywhere you want. And so the rules then tap in at, see, this is the example. So the pages of rules, we're looking at about 24 pages of rules, which is not terrible. The font's pretty big, so it's not like a super dense 24 pages. But again, this is probably one of the more complicated games we have. But you know, once you read through it, play it a little bit, a lot of the pieces fall into place, and it's a really, really slick system. And then of course your scenarios here are at the end. And there are 16 scenarios, if I remember right. I'm just gonna flip through here. There's stranger, bedfellow, well, oh, 15 scenarios. 16 is a number in my mind, but the book goes up to 15 scenarios. And then on the back, I don't know if this is on a separate page. It looks like it is here. Yep, there we go. So they got your terrain chart. This is like the only chart in the game. Terrain chart to let you know some of the modifiers to combat, and then it's got down here some conditions that can modify the dice that you roll, how you roll them, how many you roll, and that's pretty much it. So once you use this chart to determine the terrain and special conditions to modify your dice, you roll the dice. So there's no looking and cross-referencing information to find out your damage. You just figure out the final dice you roll and roll them. Like I said, if you've never seen it before, I think I've got 1 or 2 combat examples on my channel somewhere you could look. But I will be filming new stuff because that was all filmed with prototype pieces. So this will be able to make some videos with the actual stuff. So there you go. There's the rules. Counter sheets. We have 1. I think it said it should be 4, but I think there's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have 5 sheets of troops and equipment. And again, this is something that I think gets overlooked. Is I know people can be very picky about their counters, the size, the information, what's displayed on it. I'm going to say that Flying Pig Games makes some of my favorite counters. They're huge. Like, I just popped this out. It's a 1-inch. These are 1-inch counters, and they're thick, so they're sturdy. They're not flimsy or anything like that. The glue is perfect. You know, there's no sticky. It's semi-rounded. I'm gonna punch all of these with my counter punch. And then plus, it does have the side nub where it connects to the sprue, but you know, I know that always bothers me, but it's better than having, I guess, I'd rather it connected at the 4 corners. But you see how they're individually punched? That way, they're kind of semi-pre-rounded on some of these, you know. So that's just kind of a new, you know, it feels like it's a new standard, and I enjoy seeing games that do that. I just really hate that side nub. I haven't figured out how to get rid of that safely. But anyway, you get great looking counters here with Flying Pig Games. Everything is clearly legible. Now, I know you can play with smaller counters and everything is still just as legible, but there's just something very tactile and meaty when you play the game. It's nice to have these large counters. You can clearly see all the art, the numbers, everything is very legible, and once you place them against the maps, they just really pop. So these counters are fantastic. And for the price, I mean, it's an amazing amount of cardboard you get for the price of the game. I had this conversation with someone earlier that I can pay the same price for this game for another company, and then I get paper maps, and you get small counters, and sometimes they're flimsy. And what Flying Pig Games is giving you, I think, is just remarkable quality. Now, I will point out that the first thing I did when I was looking through here, I was looking for misaligned or excuse me, miscut counters. That is not a common thing that happens with Flying Pig Games. I only mention that because, and I probably shouldn't mention it, but I did. We did have a few in Old School Tactical 2 that were misaligned, and so we got those replaced for folks that it happened to. But here, it's not a problem. These are great right out of the box. I mean, I popped one. It looks great. You can see everything super legible. Even the back is good. Everything's on there. So kudos, so good that turned out. All right, so there's counters. Yeah, so there's 5 sheets. So I think the back of the box had 4 counter sheets, but I believe mostly it's 4 counter sheets of vehicles. There's some admin counters here, but it's mostly 4 sheets of vehicles and equipment, and then 1 counter sheet that is dedicated to the admin markers. If you're not familiar with the game, this is actually, I think, a fairly novel system that you have. The units are platoons, and they take, you could call this damage, you could call this morale, you could call this logistical support, but as they do an action, they get marked with a green marker to indicating that they've done an action. And based on the fact they did an action, they can't do any more firing, they can't do any more moving. It's just a way to kind of help mark what's, what has done something. And then as they take damage, then you can flip it to like 2-step loss, 3-step loss. And I guess maybe step loss isn't the best word, but this is like a penalty against your firepower. So if this unit here has got the green one, it's -1 firepower, but because they've already acted, they can't fire again or move. But they still could do counter fire, and they can still participate in close combat. And so what this represents, I think, kind of really well is the fact that as combat continues, your troops have to reload weapons. They might have to put ammo back in the racks or reload missiles and launcher tubes, or the soldiers need to get a drink, or they've got people that are suppressed. It represents a lot of potential combat battlefield conditions, and you just put the appropriate marker under. And like I said, we'll do a gameplay example and show you how those mechanics work, but it's a really nifty system that kind of does away with the one side the unit is like in perfect shape, and then you flip it, it's wounded. I mean, you still have that, but it's going to take you a few steps to get there. So yes, you still have a side where your vehicle is in great shape. Get that there for you. And then yeah, eventually you could flip it, but it's going to take some of those other markers first before you need to worry about flipping it to the reduced side. So there you go. 5 counter sheets, not just 4. Here is our player aid. Excellent. So there's two player aids, one for each player. One side has your terrain and your dice modifiers. The other side has an explanation of the counters, has a turn sequence, movement notes and reminders, range characteristics, which is good because a lot of the equipment has special markings to indicate special attacks or range. And then you've got fire combat, close combat rules. Close combat is a little bit different in this game than I've seen in other games as well. But again, here's like a little reminder for you, and then an explanation of your step loss, action loss maybe. That's all of the floating stuff. Okay, so what's left? The maps. So it does have 2 maps. I'm going to pause and I'm going to lay the map out, and then we'll take a look at map number 1. We're going to take a look at map number 1 here in just a moment. Now I've got map 1 laid out. Oh, I think I put this upside down. I guess it doesn't matter. Let me rotate it. I like to be able to read the names and see the numbers properly. I unfolded this. This is actually just a tad bit smaller overall than the old school tactical maps. I thought they were very similar in size. This is probably just, like I said, just a little bit smaller. But the artwork is gorgeous. This is one of the better desert maps I've seen. It's not just all brown, but we have over here probably like a sport stadium place, a little fortress up on a hill. It's got good detail, so even for a desert map, it's got really good detail. What I'm going to do, well here, I'll just show you some different parts of the map. Yeah, so again, a good sized map. No, the scenarios don't all use up like the entire map. Some of the scenarios you're going to play on a section of the map. Like for example, scenario 1, you're going to play on the right hand side of the map. You're going to have, I think it's rebels who are holding on to this town here. They're holding on to this town area. And then you have the enemy forces, whoever they're called. They're going to come in from that north side and sweep south here. And so you pretty much play on this section of the map. Then, of course, some of the scenarios will take up more of the map as you progress. But what I wanted to do was show you how some of these counters, they just pop. I lowered the camera a little bit. It's closer to the map. Now the counter, the hexes are... They are actually a little bit bigger than 1-inch hexes. That way your 1-inch counters fit in there nice. What I've seen in other games, which sometimes annoys me, is It says like a 1-inch hex and a 1-inch counter, but a 1-inch hex is not quite the same, I've learned, as a 1-inch counter. I guess depends on how you measure it. And so sometimes that counter will actually not fit inside. This fits perfectly. That's good. You might ask, why is that important, Eddie? Why would you care? Because it makes it much easier to put units in their corresponding hexes and maybe have a little bit of drift, but they're not bumping into each other. If they didn't fit proper, you would always be bumping your other counter stacks. Yeah, it's annoying. It's annoying when the counter is bigger than the hex and then everything bumps each other as you move it around. But no, in here, this is great. And look, the red just pops. So it's a nice color of tan, very light, but it still is a gorgeous looking map and everything pops. Here's an American robot unit. Let's grab something else, Eddie. How do the Israelis look? Well, let's see. Here's a Israeli vehicle. That pops. Let's zoom in a little bit. Look how nice this is. Again, just going back to the quality there that Mark Walker was trying to get with this game. Everything just looks so good. All pops. Let's grab a Rebel tank. This is a T-72. All right, that still fits. All right, that's good. Then there was the Al-Zawahiri or Saleh. Yeah, I can't pronounce all these, but I think these were like the ISIL units, I think. Let me check here. Oh, yeah, there's like Saleh Militia, Shadeda tank unit. But here you go. I think these are ISIL. And they're tan, but they still pop. Everything looks nice. Let's move that camera. There's an example. So there's some of the Russian units, American units, the Israeli units. Then you had the Rebel units, and I think those are ISIL. And then we have, I'm just going to grab here, an attached weapon. Here's a weapon that could potentially attach to a vehicle, and that shows up really nice too. Yeah, so again, I truly believe everything looks great and everything printed out really good. So I'm very excited to get this out and start playing. So let's reverse box here. Oh, my kid's getting happy. All right, she's not excited about the game, but she's excited about her YouTube. All right. So what comes in the base box here? My camera is zoomed in, so you might not see everything very well. But here's map 2 in the base box. Then you've got your 5 counter sheets. Oh, she's coming out. You then have 2 player aid cards. You then have your rule book and scenario book. You then also get a boatload of dice. And there's another map, but I've got that folded up.
Daddy,
yes, honey?
can I have some of my mom's candy?
Where's your mom's candy? Well, bring me mom's candy.
Okay, I want
Well, bring it to me.
jelly bean.
Well, bring it to me.
Okay.
Bring it here.
I won't lift it down because it will make a mess.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, because you spilt them last time.
Yep.
Skittles, Starbursts are not included. These are a separate purchase. Here you go.
Okay.
There you go. There's 3 because you're 3 years old. Okay?
I know.
Yeah, so an additional item here we picked up. We've had this for a little bit. I'm not a big fan of jelly beans in general, but these Starburst jelly beans are really, really good. Probably too good. Much, much too good for my diabetes. So anyway, the kid eats those. She doesn't have diabetes yet, so I let her enjoy that on occasion. But shh, don't tell Mom that I let her have some of her jelly bean things. All right, there you go. That's it in a nutshell for the base game. I'll end it here. I'll wrap it up. I gotta put the other map back in here, and then we'll come back and take a look at Burning Lands. All right, thank you so much for checking it out. Bye. Before I completely wrap this up, I realized that there's actually quite a bit of extra space in here, and I'm going to just see what all I can fit. Here's the extra dice. I'll probably put that poster, well, that's going on my wall. I'm going to put the unit cards in here, and look, there's space. Now I'm probably gonna, boy, I'm not gonna put a rubber band. I hate when I put rubber bands on cards and then it starts to bite into the cards. It just looks so, I don't know, I hate damaging. It's so minor, I know, but you know how I am. So I'll probably get like a plastic bag, stick those in there, and then I have here, just off the camera, let me grab them. There's the 600 campaign, fits perfect in the box. Let's see if I can change this around so you can see. I can put the strategy guide in. That fits. I can put Alone in the Desert in. That fits. Now, to be honest though, I haven't figured out a storage solution currently for the counters. I may just go old school, and when I punch a counter, just stick it back in the counter sheet very carefully, and then stick it back in the box. I've done that for a lot of games, and in the long run that's not very healthy for the counters because the sprues are cut very specific to each counter, and so if you don't line them back up properly, you start to get wear and tear on the counters. But if you can manage it, then this is how they traveled across the ocean, and you get everything to fit in the box. So until I change the storage solution to counters, I can fit everything, even the solo system. Bam, everything fits. That's great. Oh, and the counters I punched earlier, because again, I don't have a storage solution. But I just noticed that, and I thought I'd share that. You can fit, currently, as is, everything in the box, except for Burning Lands. We'll take a look at that next. Thanks a lot. Bye.